اللهم صل على محمد كلما ذكره الذاكرون وصل على محمد كلما غفل عن ذكره الغافلون. باب ما جاء في خطاب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. The chapter on Sayyidinaa Rasullulah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam using hair dye. So last week we reached this chapter, and like mentioned last week, the earlier scholars, they paid such detail to the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that every component, every aspect of the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was important to them. Like we read, even though all of these chapters could have been hadith could have been compiled under one chapter, but separate chapters have been dedicated to different aspects of the hair of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. A chapter on the combing of the hair of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one chapter on the white hairs of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this chapter that we are inshallah we will be covering today, on the applying of hair dye or using of hair dye. So this is an opinion that has been debated amongst the scholars whether Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used hair dye, dyed his hair or not. There are many different ahadith regarding this subject. But Imam Tirmidhii, under this chapter, he has mentioned 4 ahadith. Majority of the scholars are of the opinion that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not dye his hair. And majority of the Hanafi scholars, they also hold the same view. That in Durr al-Mukhtar, one very famous book of the Hanafi school of thought, it is mentioned that it is more accurate that Sayyidinaa Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not dye his hair. And however, on the other hand, you have some scholars, one famous scholar, Imam Bayduri al-Shafi'i rahimahullah, a commentator on Shamaa-il-Tirmidhii. He is of the opinion that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam sometimes used to dye his hair, but did not do so regularly. It was not a habit of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And under this issue of dyeing, but like mentioned last week, the Sahaba, you will find many accounts that the Sahaba radiallahu anhum did dye their hair. So it is permissible, but this is only a difference in opinion whether Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam dyed his hair or not. So we are allowed, a person who grows old and he wants to dye his hair, then the Sharia has given him permission to dye his hair. But there is one ruling to note, is that according to the Hanafi ulama, dyeing the hair is mustahab, but using black dye is makruh. To dye the hair completely black, it has been recorded that this is makruh. And the Shafi ulama, they say that the using of dye is sunnah, but the using of black dye, pure black, is haram. We'll take a look at the ahadith that have been mentioned in this chapter. وبه قال حدثنا أحمد بن منيع قال حدثنا هشيم قال حدثنا عبد الملك بن عمير عن إياد بن لطيف قال أخبرني أبو رمثة قال أتيت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم واعدني لي فقال ابنك هذا؟ فقلت نعم أشهد به. قال لا يجني عليك ولا تجني علي. قال ورأيت الشيب أحمر. قال أبو عيسى هذا أحسن شيء روي في هذا الباب وأبصر، لأن الروايات الصحيحة أنه صلى الله عليه وسلم لم يبلغ الشيب. وأبو رمثة اسمه رفاعة بن يثربي التيمي. The first hadith in this chapter has been narrated by Abu Rimtha at-Taymi radiyallahu anhu. Mentions that I attended a gathering of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam with my son. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he asked a question, Ibnuka hadha? Is this your son? فَقُلْتُ نَعَمْ. I replied, I said, yes, this is my son. أَشْهَدُ بِهِ. You be a witness to it. قال لا يجني عليك ولا تجني علي. So this, what did he say? This Sahabi, Abu Rimtha, so Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said to him, لا يجني عليك ولا تجني علي. The revenge of his jinayah, his crime, is not on you, nor is the revenge of your jinayah, your crime, on him. that it was a custom, to understand this, you have to understand that prior to Islam, it was the custom of the Arabs at the time, pre-Islam, in the Ayyamul Jahiliyyah, in the days of ignorance, the period of ignorance before Islam, before the time of, before Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was sent as a prophet to these people, that a son was punished for the crimes of his father. If the father done a crime, then the son would be punished. That it was on this basis of the pre-Islamic custom that the Sayyidinaa Abu Rimtha radiallahu anh gave the reply that he did. So that if it was necessary at any time, that thinking about the old custom, Sayyidinaa Rasullulah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would indeed be a witness that this was his son. That if any crime was committed, then the son could pay for that crime. But Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam refuted this custom of Jahiliyyah, saying that this is not the law of Islam. لا يجني عليك ولا تجني عليه. That no person commits a crime, explaining that no person is to commit a crime and then the person gets punished for it. Whoever commits a crime, he will be punished for it. So the translation of that, once again, لا يجني عليك ولا تجني عليه. The revenge of his jinayah is not on you. That if he was to do a crime, if the child was to do a crime, then you will not have to bear responsibility of the crimes of your son. And same way, if you are to do a crime, then your child will not bear the responsibility of your crimes. And in the part that is related to this hadith, قال وَرَأَيْتُ الشَّيْبَ أَحْمَرَ. And Abu Rimtha radiallahu anh said, at that time when this conversation took place, when I attended this gathering, I noticed a few hair of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam were red. Imam al-Tirmidhii says, his own opinion after the hadith, قال Abu Isa, referring to Imam al-Tirmidhii, هذا أحسن شيء روي في هذا الباب أفصل. This hadith is the most accurate regarding the object of using dye. That obviously here, because the Sahabi radiallahu anh, he saw that the hairs of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the hair was red. The hair were red. In the next second hadith, وبه قال حدثنا سفيان بن وكيع قال حدثنا أبي عن شريك عن عثمان بن موهب قال سئل أبو هريرة هل خضب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال نعم قال أبو عيسى وروى أبو عوانة هذا الحديث عن عثمان بن عبد الله عن عبد الله بن موهب فقال عن أم سلمة. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu was asked, Uthman ibn Mawhib, he mentions that Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu was asked, did Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam use a dye for his hair? Hal khadaba. Khadaba is the word for dyeing. Has Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu replied, Na'am. So this hadith is in favor of the opinion that Nabi sallallahu did apply dye to his hair. Qala na'am. Implied yes. The third hadith in this chapter, وبه قال حدثنا إبراهيم بن هارون قال حدثنا النضر بن زرارة عن أبي جناب عن إياد بن لقيط عن الجهذمة امرأة بشير بن الخصاصية قالت أنا رأيت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يخرج من بيتي ينفض رأسه وقد اغتسل وبرأسه ردع من حناء أو حناء أو قال ردغ شك في هذا الشيخ. This hadith has been narrated, the third hadith in this chapter, by Jahdama radiallahu anha, the wife of Bashir ibn Khasasiyya radiallahu anhu. She mentions that I saw Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam coming out of his house, يخرج من بيتي ينفض رأسه, and he was combing, or he was stroking his hair, or he was combing his hair. After he had showered. So after Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam had taken a shower, he was either combing or he was stroking his hair. وَبِرَأْسِهِ رَدَعٌ مِّنْ حِنَّاءٍ. And there were signs of hinna on his mubarak, on his blessed head. So this hadith is also in the favor that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because there was an effect, traces of hinna left. So this hadith also implies that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam did apply dye to his hair. But the next hadith, last hadith of the chapter, وبه قال حدثنا عبد الله بن عبد الرحمن قال أنبأنا عمرو بن عاصم قال حدثنا حماد بن سلمة قال أنبأنا حميد عن أنس قال رأيت شعر رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم مخضوبا قال حماد قال وأخبرنا عبد الله بن محمد بن عقيل قال رأيت شعر رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عند أنس بن مالك مخضوبا. Anas radiallahu anhu said, I saw the hair of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. I saw the hair of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam had been dyed. So again, this final hadith has also in the favor that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam did dye his hair. But like again, as we initially explained, there are different ahadith regarding this particular subject. But there seems to be apparent contradiction. This final hadith, fourth hadith of this chapter, has been narrated by Anas radiallahu anhu, and also the first hadith, an earlier hadith narrated by Anas and the first hadith of the previous chapter, which was narrated by Anas radiallahu anhu, that when Nabi Hazrat Anas radiallahu anhu denied the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam using dye. One, how to reconcile between these two hadith? One opinion is that they could have been narrated at two different times. But again, like was mentioned, there are different opinions regarding this subject. And although the majority of the scholars are of the opinion Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not dye his hair, and Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his hair did not reach that stage where he had to dye his hair. Because dye is usually the reason was applying dye to the hair was to conceal the white hairs. And the scholars there mentioned that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he only had very few white hairs at the time of his demise. May Allah bless Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The next chapter is also a short chapter. باب ما جاء في كهل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. The chapter on the kuhl of Sayyidinaa Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Kuhl in Urdu translated as surma. Many places familiar with this word. And in English, one translation has been given, carulium. So I'll just use the word kuhl or surma. So is usually applied to the eyes. So to apply kuhl, we've gone this chapter before. Take a look at our hadith. To apply kuhl in the eyes is mustahab. And when a person applies kuhl, one should apply kuhl with the intention, or surma with the intention of reward. That way, you will receive benefit for the eyes, and also on top of this, a person will receive ajr, will receive reward, thawab, following the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And under this chapter, under this heading, Imam At-Tirmidhii has mentioned 5 ahadith. وبه قال first hadith وبه قال حدثنا محمد بن حميد الرازي قال حدثنا أبو داود الطيالسي عن عباد بن منصور عن إكرمة عن ابن عباس أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال اكتحلوا بالإثمد فإنه يجل البصر وينبت الشعر. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu says Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, use kuhl, use surma or carulium made of ithmid. So the surma, the type of surma that should be used is the one made of ithmid on the eye. Why? What are the benefits? Number one, it illuminates the eyesight. It is good for the eyesight. And at the same time, and while strengthening and increasing growth of the eyelashes, it also has this. So it has 2 benefits. It's beneficial for the eyes, it improves one's eyesight, and secondly, it helps in the growth of the eyelashes. And the scholars وزعم أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كانت له مكحلة يكتحل منها كل ليلة 3 في هذه و3 في هذه. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had a small container for keeping kuhl. So that where the kuhl, the surma that was stored in a small container. From which Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam applied kuhl, surma, in each eye 3 times every night. So, firstly, we take a look at what is the word ithmid, because the type of surma to be used is the one which is produced from ithmid. So this type of surma or this type of kuhl There's a special type of kuhl which is reddish, blackish in color between the two, and is usually can be obtained in Eastern countries. Some of the scholars they say that it is the Isfahani kuhl, and so there's a bit of different opinions in this. And the scholars they mention that kuhl surma should only be used for those people, by those people whose eyesight it agrees to, meaning that it does not affect a person's eye, that you could say is compatible with that person, and it does not affect the eyesight. Otherwise, a sick person's eye would pain more by its use, and he should abstain by it. And second thing that we learn in the hadith, when should a person apply surma? From this hadith, towards the end, we learn يَبْتَهِلُ مِنْهَا كُلَّ لَيْلَةٍ. The time for applying surma, if a person wishes to apply the surma, then a person should apply at night time before a person goes to sleep. And the benefit of this, it will remain longer in the eyes, and it will penetrate deeply into the pores. And what is the method of application? How many times it should be applied, or in which eye? How should it be applied? There are a few narrations in this regard. The one mentioned here is the more famous one, that it should be applied 3 times in each eye. 3 times in the right eye, 3 times in the left eye. ثلاثة في هذه وثلاثة في هذه. In other hadith, you'll find narrations in which we have been taught, you get this second method, that 3 times in the right eye and 2 times in the left eye. And how can we reconcile between these? That at different times Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam applied different practices. And one other method was, which I read somewhere, was that two times in the right eye, 2 times in the left eye, and without putting the stick again inside the container, we use in that same once in both right and left eye. But the first opinion is the more popular, which is mentioned more in the hadith, and it has been mentioned many times from Sayyidinaa Rasullulah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as will be seen in the hadith to come. This is why Hafiz ibn Hajar Amullah al-Qari have also preferred this first method, that 3 times in the right eye and 3 times in the left eye. And again, at night time, it should be done at night time. And the type of surma to be used is the one that comes from, which originates from ithmid. The second hadith in this chapter, وَبِهِ قَالَ حَدَّثَنَا عَبْدُ اللَّهِ بْنُ الصَّبَّاحِ الْهَاشِمِيُّ الْبَصْرِيُّ قَالَ أَخْبَرْنَا عُبَيْدُ اللَّهِ بْنُ مُوسَى قال أخبرنا إسرائيل بن يونس عن عباد بن منصور وبه قال حدثنا علي بن حجر قال حدثنا يزيد بن هارون قال حدثنا عباد بن منصور عن إكرمة عن ابن عباس قال كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يكتهل قبل أن ينام بالإثم 3 في كل عين. So here again is the narration of Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu. He mentioned that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam would apply surma, carilium, before sleeping, قبل أن ينام, the time before sleeping, بالإثمد, the type بالإثمد, and 3 times in each eye. 3 في كل عين. وقال يزيد بن هارون في حديثه إن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كانت له مكهلات يكتهل منها عند النوم 3 في كل عين. And it is reported that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had which has been also mentioned, again repetition, and had a small container. كانت له مكهلة, had a small container for keeping kuhl, keeping the surma, on which he applied kuhl in each eye 3 times before sleeping. The next hadith. وبه قال حدثنا أحمد بن منيع قال حدثنا محمد بن يزيد عن محمد بن إسحاق عن محمد بن المنكدر عن جابر هو ابن عبد الله قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عليكم بالإثم عند النوم فإنه يجل البصر وينبت الشعر. Jabir ibn Abdullah radiallahu anhu, he mentions that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, use, here Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam instructed the Sahaba, use the kuhl made from ithmid for the eyes. And why? The 2 benefits are given, which was mentioned in the first hadith. It illuminates the vision. It is good for a person's eyesight and strengthens the growth of the eyelashes. The next hadith, وَمِنْ قَالَ حَدَّثْنَا قُتَيْبًا وَقَالَ حَدَّثْنَا بِشْرُ بْنُ الْمُفَضَّلِ عن عبد الله بن عثمان بن خثيم عن سيد بن جبين عن ابن عباس قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن خير أكهالكم الإثمد يجل البصر وينبت الشعر. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, he mentions that Rasulullah ﷺ said, the best kind from all the corners used by you, إِنَّكَ خَيْرَ أَكْهَالِكُمْ, the best time of surma, the best type of carnelian that a person can use is the one which is made from ithmid. And the benefit of it, again, it illuminates the eyesight and strengthens the growth of the eyelashes. The next hadith, which is the final hadith of the chapter. قال حدثنا إبراهيم بن المستمر البصري قال حدثنا أبو عاصم عن عثمان بن عبد الملك عن سالم عن ابن عمر قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عليكم بالإثم فإنه يجل البصر وينبت الشعر. Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu related that the same hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that alaykum bil ithmin, the wording is the same as that. Use kuhl made from ithmid, it brightens the vision and strengthens the growth of the eyelashes. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to understand what has been said and study more about, get to know more about the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and also allow us to practice whatever we can from the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam and bring this into our life. Sallallahu ta'ala ala khayri khalqi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. We'll continue here from next week.